Welcome to the Recovering Perfectionist Podcast, where I empower you to develop sustainable habits, challenge society, and take messy action. I'm Christine, life balance coach and world champion ballroom dancer, and I believe that everyone has the power to create their very own life by design. The Recovering Perfectionist Podcast was created with a mission to encourage a life of abundance by finding peace and acceptance in our own imperfections and developing healthy self-love through sustainable habits and manifestation. It's time to align with the universe for the full human experience and redefine what it really means to be successful.
It's too good, the secret is out and wow.
All right, welcome back to another episode of The Recovering Perfectionist. I am so excited to introduce you my guest for today. His name is Metodru Day, and I'm going to let him introduce himself because he has a variety of things that he does, and I'm very excited for you guys to hear this conversation today. So welcome.
Hello, Christine, and the listeners of the Recovering Perfectionist Podcast. We are still in January, so Happy New Year.
Yes.
Looking forward to our discussion. To introduce myself, I am a financial services executive working in a global multinational investment bank. That's my day job. Outside that, I am a practitioner of Vedanta, which is the ancient philosophy of the world. And I write articles on personal development, mindfulness, living on various magazines.
I love that. And that's a great segue into how we actually connected, because we connected through one very awesome Susie Moore. So shout out to Susie Moore. She's fantastic. She has a program called 5 Minutes to Famous, which I signed up for like middle of 2020. I found her on Instagram and it was great. It's all about getting published in major articles and magazines and things like that. And it's a very easy course and she makes it really fun. So so that was really cool. And she put us in a Facebook group. And so we've been able to connect and you reached out and I'm so glad that you did. So tell me a little bit about you, your background, like where obviously you have this beautiful accent. You're not from this country. Yes. I love talking to people that have, eclectic cultural backgrounds. So tell me a little bit about, how that's made your journey.
Sure. I'm born and raised in a small town in India. I did not study in English until my graduation. So where I am now today was not even a dream when I was growing up, that one day I'll be in the US working in a bank and giving an interview in English to you, right?
Wow.
So that was never a dream. So my dream was, okay, I'll finish my study, I'll maybe get a government job and retire from that job.
And stay in India.
I stay in India.
Okay, so you really never really imagined that you would come to the United States?
No, that was never the plan. And What happened with me in life is what I never wanted to do, I ended up doing that. For example, I studied economics. So I never wanted to study economics. I ended up studying economics and then I did masters in that subject. I never wanted to join a corporation. That was the last option for me, but I ended up joining corporations because I never got a government job. And then I never wanted to go outside the country and leave, and that again ended up doing that. One thing was common throughout my life was I was always intrigued by different self-development techniques. I always wanted to improve myself, try new challenges. For example, I started working in Bangalore in India, and I did not speak the local language in Bangalore. So I had to struggle a lot because I could speak English, but there were people who could not understand English. So it was a struggle. And that gave me a lot of confidence. So when I decided to move to the US, I said, okay, now I'm moving to a country where people can understand my language. Uh, so, so, so,
Wow.
so that, so that, as I mentioned, that I always look for new challenges. And moving to the US really changed my life, because until I was in India, my life revolved around working 10 hours to 12 hours a day, sometimes on weekend. I never did anything else. But when I moved to New York, I figured out that people are doing so much for the communities. There are so many programs.
Mm.
I could involve myself. Public speaking was one of my challenges. So I joined Toastmasters Club at the United Nations, and I got to meet a lot of people who are doing a lot for the community. So that's how I started working for different nonprofit organization as a consultant.
That's
However, my
amazing.
yeah, my life really changed a few years back, where one day I was just sitting at work and it occurred to me, am I productive at work? Am I giving my best? I
Mm.
asked these questions and I did not find any answers. So I started reading numerous books, articles, watched motivational videos with millions of likes. As I mentioned, I always inspired to do self self development techniques, but
Mhm.
nothing gave me satisfactory answers. One day I came across a 5-minute video which caught my attention immediately. And I ended up watching that video on my way to work for 6 months. The video did not have a name of the speaker, so I kept wondering how to find the speaker. You must be wondering what was there in the video. So what happened?
Yeah, now you've got me on the edge of my seat.
So what happened is that as I was looking for a source or resource to
Hmm.
find out how I can be more productive, that video started with the question, how many hours a day you work? So the speaker asked that question to the audience. It was a corporate setup. So people said maybe 20%, maybe 50%, maybe 60%. No one said 100%. I thought, wow, so they are in my club. I am also not 100% productive.
Wow.
Then he asked, why you think that you are not productive at work? The people came up with different answers. But then the speaker said, the reason is either we worry about the past or get anxious about the future. So we are not at the present. So
Hmm.
that makes us tired, that makes us fatigued. It's not the work. So that's what we are looking for weekend and vacation, because that
Mm.
worries of the past and anxiety for the future make us tired. I said, okay, that sounds interesting. Then
Yeah.
he said something fascinating. He said, do you know who is productive? And people were like, no. Then he said, look at your child. Look at your child
Mm.
when you go back home after work. Obviously, I'm talking about pre-pandemic days.
Right.
Your child is bursting with energy. They're jumping around. They said, Papa or Mama, I want to play with you. And he said, hold on, I'm tired. I had a
Mhm.
long day at work. Let me rest.
Right.
But your child wants to play, and you are much stronger than your child. Why? Because your child doesn't worry about the past or get anxious about the future.
Right. It's all about the right now.
Yeah, it's all about the right now. And then if
Hmm.
you go a little deeper, like then ask like why? Because your child has less selfishness than you. They don't think about what will happen to me, what will happen to me if this doesn't happen, if this happens, right? I mean, that burns out our energy. So that
For sure.
video was fascinating. And then after 6 months I was watching, and one thing was brewing in my mind, that okay, how I can find this person. I got so connected with him and watching him every day. As I mentioned, there was no name, nothing. So I thought, okay, let me just search on Google, worries of the past and anxiety for the future. So I literally put those words, And a YouTube interview came up of my current teachers, my spiritual teacher, Gautam Jain, who runs a nonprofit called Vedanta Cultural Foundation and conducts free weekly classes in New York and New Jersey. And there was one class next to the train station. I was commuting every day. So I was passing that building without knowing the answer of my question lies in that building. So I started.
Wow. Energy. Oh, I got chills when you said that.
Yes.
But I'm going to stop you real quick. I will, because first of all, for those listening, as you can tell, I told you I was really excited about this guest. He's got a lot of amazing things. You just hit so many points. I had to take some notes because I didn't want to miss anything. So we're going to unpack that a little bit slowly here so that everyone can digest it, because you're hitting so many key life things that I think so many people need to hear and repeat in order for it to actually be absorbed properly. So the first thing that you said is that you did all of these things, like join a corporation and study economics and all of these things that you said you would never do, right? But it led you to where you are. Obviously, everyone, we don't have, if people are, doing life right, they're not really having regrets. They understand that it's all about the journey. But it's interesting because as the recovering perfectionist concept, I have talked many times about the fact that I, have lived my life according to what was given to me and a template of society. And this is what you do. And you kind of start to check all the boxes, like in my world, it was, I did the family business, which was dancing. And then I became a world champion, which was great. Awesome box to check. And then I went to college, and then I started checking all the boxes. And then I realized I wasn't happy. So the concept of all of that is that society tells you that if you check all your boxes, you do all your stuff, that you're going to find your bliss and your purpose and all of these things. But at the end of the day, that's not always the case. And people need to know that that doesn't mean that something's wrong with them, or that they're broken, or that they didn't do it right. You know what I mean? And so it's interesting that you said you were not going to do all these things, but you did end up doing them, and how that affected your life. You obviously don't regret it. You're in a really good space right now, and you have so much knowledge and resources that you've acquired and skills. So how did that affect, why did you end up doing these things? And was it just a path the universe was leading you down? You just kind of trusted the process?
Now, if I look back, yes. I think because whatever everyone is today is because of his or her past actions. And also now I believe that wherever you are today is the best position you can think about and start your journey. So right now, I think my focus is more on, okay, whatever happened in past, now how I can determine the direction in future. So that's important to me. And you talked about societies, our parents and families and friends tell us to do things. We end up doing all those things, and that's something also I'm trying to change in myself, to develop my capacity to think, to question, ask.
Be curious. Why? Yes, give yourself permission to ask questions. Yes.
Right. Because I think as a human, that's the greatest gift one has, the power of thinking, right? Because if you take away power of thinking, we are as equal as other animals, which they do whatever they want to do. I mean, they don't think, right? So I think we really underutilize the skill of thinking, and
I totally agree.
Victim of herd instinct. I mean, that's unfortunate, but we are.
So I just started reading this book. I recommend it. I will be shouting this book from the rooftops for the rest of my life. It's called Essentialism. Have you read it?
No, I haven't heard about it.
Fantastic. It's Greg McKeown, and it's McKeown for those looking. It's called Essentialism, and it's the concept of the disciplined pursuit of less. And he says he says exactly what you just said about choice and about, let me see if I can find it here. Just believing we must choose choice. When we forget our ability to choose, we will become helpless or hopeless. Our first act of free will is to believe we have free will, and you must exercise your power of choice. And the concept of the disciplined pursuit of less is that success comes from subtraction and not addition, not by doing more, not by being on every platform, not by doing all of the things that the society says you should do. You need to pick your path, you need to focus and stick with it. But also know that you have choice. And I think that's what kind of my point was with the society thing, is that with this template, you tend to check boxes that everybody else is checking. Because it's like, oh, well, my neighbor down the street and the person I go to school with and my classmate and all of these things, they're all doing it. They're all getting married. They're all having kids. I should be doing that too. Where's my check mark? Right? But everyone's path is different. And I think our generations now are learning more and more that they have permission to dream and to do different things. And it's okay if you don't want kids. It's okay if you don't, if you don't end up getting a degree, but you actually end up making six figures in another area. There's so many different paths that can be taken. And so the book just highlights how people apply themselves in life and how they look at things and how society conditions us and programs us to almost do the opposite. And we kind of have to delayer that. But I'm interested actually more in your culture, because you also said something that kind of caught my ear, was that when you moved to the United States, that was the first time you actually learned that life did not have to be all about work. And I think it's the opposite, because I think that America is mainly about consumerism and the 24/7 entrepreneur, go American dream, where I come from France, and the European lifestyle is we take 3 hours for lunch and we do, and we take our time. And, there's a whole nother conversation about how, they're not really trying to work as much, but at the end of the day, there's a value system around family and vacationing and taking time to relax and absorb and really enjoy life, which I think the United States has trouble finding that balance. And I don't know a lot about India. So I'm curious about the difference in culture there and why you believe that when you came here, that was the first time you learned about that.
Yes, that's a great question, and you're right. If you when growing up, there's a strong culture of family, friends.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we do value material things, but I think more values are given to relationship, friendship, spirituality. The one thing I struggled when I was in India with spirituality and religion is that I did not find logic and reason pursuing those. When I asked this question, okay, you want me to do a ritual, like why? No one could answer that question.
Oh, you didn't find logic in a ritual.
Right.
Gotcha.
So yes, everything was there, what I'm doing now, but I was kind of shut off. And I think my outlook changed, because when you change the country, it's a new country. And even if you want or don't want, you need to start from the scratch. So I not only start from the scratch my corporate life, but I also looked at my personal life. Okay, what all changes I need to make? So I really started thinking when I moved here, because it is a new country, new culture, which I did not do in India, because it was given. It was my country. I know how things work.
Right. You didn't question a lot there.
I did not question.
So that's a very good point, because we're going to say that again for the people in the back, is that I've always encouraged people that wherever you were born, whatever country, always move at least once or twice in your life. And you don't have to stay there. You can go back and be with your family or whatever, but you, like you said, will become more curious. You will learn about more cultures. Your eyes will be open to so many more things when you change drastically the environment around you and the people that you're surrounded by. So I highly encourage that. And I see you had a very similar experience. So
yes.
Sorry, keep going.
And one thing, I want to highlight is also it made me more philosophical.
Mm-hmm.
When I again, now it's all online, but I used to have my spiritual class in Manhattan, and we really think about it. It's Manhattan, which is Wall Street and everything, a lot of money, billions and trillions of dollars. In middle of all those wealth, there's a center for spirituality. You can learn what life is all about. So there is a conflict, there's a dichotomy in life where it doesn't matter where you are. If you want to pursue something, you find it. So that was an aspect which really, as you rightly said, here when I moved to US, obviously people are talking a lot about doing work, getting things done, move up in life, but also this side where you can also pursue spirituality. Also, what made me question life more, because when I moved here, I saw people are talking about depression, which was not so much when I was in India.
Interesting.
And I saw
Mental health. Yeah, we talk a
mental
lot about
health,
mental health. Yeah.
drug abuse. Students are taking anti-anxiety pills, which were unheard of when I was growing up, or even now in India. So
Yeah, I feel that way with France too. I remember when I was growing up in elementary school, a lot of kids that I went to school with had ADD or ADHD, which is attention deficit disorder. And I thought, what is that? And then I was explained, and I thought, well, how come I never knew anyone in Europe that had that? And it's because they don't diagnose people that way. They just, people are outside playing, they're getting energy out. Like you said, they're living in the present moment. They're not stressing about something, they don't start that very, very young. They allow them to go out and be active and do all these things. And I think in the United States, there's a lot of pressure put on education, but there's a lot of pressure put on succeeding.
yes, absolutely. And we call it that, okay, people are in a rat race and you need to run, you need to finish first. But thing is that end of the race, you are still a rat. So no one again steps back and asks question like why I'm doing it, right? I mean, that we talked about the problem of following herd instinct, uh, which is unfortunate that people don't ask questions. I think it's important for everyone, like to ask questions what life is all about, because if you really break it down, whatever we do, the end goal is to being happy, being peaceful, whatever you do in life. So that's the bottom line. And so if someone is asking you to do something, you can ask that person, okay, you pursue that, are you happy? So asking that question.
The follow-up question, I think, is how do we measure happiness, right? Because I think a lot of people think that, well, when I have millions of dollars, I'll be happy. Or when I have a big house and a fancy car, I'll be happy. Or when I find the love of my life, I'll be happy. It doesn't even have to be about money. When I have, I think for me, the way I define happiness is self-love and a healthy mind and body. Because if you don't have your health, you really don't have anything. And
Yes.
having millions of dollars and the fancy cars and all of those things, those can be fun in a moment. But if you don't have good relationships and you're not happy with yourself and you're struggling with a lot of self-doubt and unworthiness, which could lead to depression and all of those things, then when you can get all the money you want, but it's never going to make you happy, because who are you going to share it with?
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, I think and that's the thing with American society, with the media. I think they showcase these, stars and these musicians and rappers and everything that have all of this stuff. It's very materialistic and consumerism. And so they think, well, they're happy because of that. And most of those people we discover later on are actually very unhappy. They're just putting on these acts, and they're almost in their own version of a hamster wheel. It's just a more expensive one, dripped in gold.
Right. I was watching a
That's crazy.
trailer. I don't know if you heard about that. It's on HBO called The Weight of Gold. So
I have not.
It's about the people who won gold in Olympics, including I think I'm forgetting the name. I think Michael Phelps, who won maximum.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So the Olympians that had the gold.
So this series is about all those Olympians who won gold and say how depressed they are, how depressed is their life. They could not do what they want to do because they were told you to do this, do that, and then say, okay, what's the end result?
And what do they do after that? I think that's the
Yes.
thing I learned also in the competitive dance industry. I started a little bit late, and I also ended my career very early. So I had a very short career and I was just kind of in and out, which I preferred it that way. But at the end of the day, I won my title. I did what I needed to do, but I could see that if I was in it longer, the way some of my other peers were, that you just get stuck in this way of thinking and you don't actually develop skills that are required to be happy or to survive in the real world. And that's why I created this podcast, Recovering Perfectionist, because I came from a world just like Michael Phelps, where the perfection is at its peak. And if you're not perfect, they don't even look at you. You're not even asked on the floor. So when you get to a place like that, like that's not real life. It's just not. Like sometimes you can put something out and people can't relate to perfection because they'll never feel like they'll be able to reach it. And so by being able to show people that you're just like them, I mean, I think that's a great example, I think, of the show you were just talking about. Like you see all these people who have done amazing things and we look at them at this high level. I just saw the documentary they put out on HBO Max with Tiger Woods, how he's like the epitome of, athlete in this industry. And then they found out that he wasn't perfect and he got divorced and was cheating and had scandals and all these things. And it's like, yeah, he's human, like how many people have done exactly what he did, but because he's Tiger Woods, he was scrutinized and dragged through the mud because of it. And poor guy, he can't even live a normal life. But then again, we say, well, poor guy, he's got millions of dollars. That's kind of what he signed up for. But at the end of the day, it's like, there's no handbook on how to live like that. He's going to make mistakes just like everybody else. He's not superhuman,
Absolutely. I mean, that's, and as you rightly pointed out, it reminded me of a quote about, happiness, which I read. It's by a German philosopher, Arthur Schopenhauer. He said, it is difficult to find happiness within oneself. It is difficult to find happiness within oneself, but it is impossible to find it anywhere else. So if you're not happy within, because you only can control what your emotions, what you can think about, but you cannot control other people's emotions, how it will change, how the world will change, how an object will change, how a person will change. You have no control. So it is very important how you can be happy within and cultivate that skill gradually. Then so you can face any challenge in life.
For sure. Yeah. So let's say it again, because you said it is difficult to find happiness within oneself, because that itself is a journey. Right. To really find happiness, it's, going through the steps and trying to go through your childhood traumas and your social conditioning and programming when you're younger and limiting beliefs and all that stuff. We've all had to go through that work. And if you haven't, eventually you have to, because something hits the wall. But it is impossible to find it outside of yourself, which means that if you don't look within yourself, you'll never find it.
Yes.
So that's deep. I love that. That's a very interesting perspective that, it's hard, but that's part of the journey. You're going to have to do it at one point or another, and you're never going to find it anywhere else. So at least, at the end of it, there's a light.
Yes.
That's the idea, Right. So we were talking earlier about productivity. You were talking about being present in the moment. That's my thing as well, is the habits, right? We were talking about that a little bit when we first met, the habit building. I'm big on the disciplines of sustainable habits and creating longevity and consistency in what you do. And that comes from, my disciplines in the competitive field. But what is it that how do you feel about habit building? Like, what have you learned about productivity and how that's helped you, in your business and in your adult life to just be more productive with habits?
Sure. So what I do is that I practice 3 yogas every day. Obviously, yoga is very commonly used word. But what I'm talking about is when you say yoga, so it means a discipline, not physical postures, which we do in yoga studios. So there are 3 yogas which I follow. It's yoga of knowledge, yoga of action, and yoga of devotion.
Interesting. So it's like a methodology, or it's like a mantra in a sense.
Yes, I mean that's the discipline I've been studying as part of my spiritual course, right? Nice. So I'll explain each yogas briefly. So first is yoga of knowledge. So when you get up in the morning, you study a literature or watch a video which talks about higher values of life, and that must come from someone whom you trust, who you think that he or she can advise you, what are the resources, materials you can study. So do it first thing in the morning, and you need to follow a systematic study. So it cannot be today you are reading something, tomorrow you are reading something else, because you really need to go deep. Because as
Stay focused.
stay focused, as you know, with the
Yeah.
habit, you need to practice every day.
Yep.
So and for me, it's the spiritual books, and I do e-learning on Vedanta, which is the ancient Indian wisdom. But it can be anything that appeals to you, that you think it motivates you, escalates you to the higher level. Uh,
And
so
don't get distracted, I think is the big thing too. Because that's,
yes,
my business coach has always said, there's so much distraction out there that you lock into something, you start applying it, you get results, and then you start to drop off, which is totally normal because you start to settle into something, and then you need to have feedback, reevaluate, and input new in order to get a different result, or more of the same result you got. And what happens is that people see that as like, oh no, I'm not getting results anymore. And then they jump into another program and then they start all over again. And it's like,
that's
but
right.
if you would just keep consistency with this one thing, you wouldn't have to keep starting over all the time when you feel like you're not getting results. That's a normal period. And you just need to learn how to optimize your system so that it can be productive long-term. And I don't think people want to go through that dry period, that plateau,
Yes. So Christian, what did you study in college? Or which college you studied?
So I studied interior design. I bet you didn't expect me to say that.
No, I mean, that's good. So I mean, the reason I asked that question,
Yeah.
so when you decided to study interior design, you did your research, right? You finalized, okay, you are going to study interior design in this college, and you are going to follow 2, 3, 4 year course, right? So similarly,
I did. I got it. Yeah, I actually, in the United States, the top interior design program was at Kansas State University, which was 2 hours from where I grew up. And they were only accepting 50 people every year, and people from all over the United States, because it was the #1 in the nation. They had an amazing interior design program that linked with an architecture program. So you learned all about, architectural detailing, and not just how to put pillows together. You know what I mean? It was very detailed, and it was nationally ranked, and I was accepted in that first year. It was incredible. Like, yeah, when you choose that and you go into it, it's just phenomenal.
yeah. So similarly, I think you also need to follow, anyone needs to follow the same discipline. So once you decide to follow a course, you need to stick to it. You need to, have faith on the teachers and subjects. Either it could be interior designing, it could be law, it could be engineering, it could be medicine. So similarly, when I'm talking about this study, you need to follow discipline and structure. So it cannot be, as you rightly mentioned, change, every 6 months or 7 months. So you need to give that time. Second thing is the timing of the day. So this has to be first thing in the morning before you touch your mobile. You start, looking at other devices, because when you get up in the morning, your capacity to absorb is maximum. So you don't want to waste that time. And there are thousands of studies which says that, all CEOs and high achiever, they use this morning time to perfect their skills. So similarly,
it's sacred. It's sacred time when you first wake up. Yeah, it's your time. I agree. Totally agree. I do that with a lot of my clients as well, because, I was the one, we end up getting a lot of clients that are former versions of ourselves. And I was the one that was the first person on the phone, constantly checking my emails and somebody needs me and all of that stuff. And yeah, that is a very unsustainable habit that to create. It needs to end very quickly when you figure it out.
Right. And also one thing important is that, you should not spend more than 1 hour, 1 or 10 minutes, because it's very important to have that concentrated study. It should not be too long that you feel tired, because this takes time to absorb insight. So, get
Have
up
you
in the
ever
morning.
used the Pomodoro effect?
I studied it in some of the courses. I never used it.
Yeah.
But,
So for those who don't know, the Pomodoro effect is 90 minutes on, 20 minutes off, 90 minutes. So you end up doing sprints. So people who work straight for 4 hours and never take a break, essentially what's happening is that you are not as productive. Obviously, you start to drop off. Your energy is really good. And then you hit a plateau and then you fall. So the last 2 or 3 hours are really not productive. And so you need to be taking more breaks. So the idea is if you do 90 minutes on and you really just go and you focus on one thing, one or two tasks, and then you take 20 minutes and go have lunch or go for a walk around the block or, meditate, whatever it is, then you can come back and really, really focus and not feel like you're just pushing to get your to-do list done.
Right. So that's yoga of knowledge. So it's like studying early in the morning, 1 hour, 10 minutes, concentration is required for that. Second is yoga of action, which is important because that's where we spend most of our time acting. So we are working, we have family responsibilities. Now here the important thing is what's your attitude. So how you change your attitude should be how we can serve or sacrifice, think about others, how we can reduce selfishness. For example, you have a business or you are working for a corporation. Your goal should be how I can benefit my client, how I can serve them instead of how I can squeeze them to maximize my profit. So that's selfishness. So if you change your attitude to serve and sacrifice for the organization or for your clients, what will happen? Your selfishness reduces. The effect is that your capacity to contribute will be more because you are less stressed. I mean, that's the reason when you look up to your idol, who could be a patriot or someone in army, because they have that higher purpose in life for the country. They need to work for. So they don't think about, what will my wife say or what is happening at my home, because they have a higher purpose in life. So if you're cultivating that attitude to serve, again, you can start little, like, let me serve my organization. What's the goal of my organization? Let's work for that.
And what will happen? How can I accomplish selflessness today? How can I practice gratitude by serving others today? Even as simple as, I think the biggest pet peeve for me is when people just are so unaware in their day to day as they move through the world, that they don't hold doors for each other, or they cross in front of, like people are just, that I think is a great way to start, is like, just be coexistent and self-aware of other people in your space. And that can make anyone's day. You don't know what they're going through.
Right. And as you rightly mentioned, it could be as simple as that, after you, right?
Yeah.
And also, let's say, you are at home and your kids want to watch a cartoon show and you don't want to watch, but just spend time with them, watch that cartoon show for 20-30 minutes. But in turn, I mean, if you practice unselfishness, I think you will get more from people, because they will say, this is someone who is doing this thing for me. So next time I'm going to do something for that person.
Totally.
So if we all start practicing that, I think overall our happiness will increase, and I think we will achieve more. I mean, and if you look at macro level, I mean, that's how this country was built, because everyone came together to work for the country, United States, right? I need to work for that country. So that's how United States became the global power, because everyone.
What is it? There's the famous president Kennedy who said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." That is something I think people need to constantly remember, that's an important value to hold.
Yeah, because what happens often, we get deviate from duties to rights. So when we focus on rights, so it's like, it's mine, it's selfishness versus duty, like what I can do. So the moment you shift that, and the result is in front of us. Because I was reading a report which says that 15% of university students are on anti-anxiety pills, because they constantly got how I can do better, right? One in every 5 Americans are dealing with anxiety. Like, why? So I think it's very important, like how I can change the mindset. It is difficult, no doubt.
It is, but it's necessary to push, like you said, the more that you can help and serve others, whether it's in your business, in your personal life, whatever that may be. I think that, we have way too much time to think, and we overthink things a lot in our heads. And so we can be more present by serving people in the present moment. I love that. And you said there were 3, so you have one more.
Yeah, so that was yoga of action. That's what I think I spend more time, because we most of our time,
that's a good one. That's a very good one.
And the last one is yoga of devotion, which relies on understanding what you have got, understanding of gratitude, understand
Mm,
that you got 24 supply of oxygen, which you don't realize we take for granted. You don't know
every
millions of
single day.
bacteria,
Yep.
working inside your gut to keep you healthy.
Yep.
You get your mother's milk, like so many things, nature has given you, and it is very important to acknowledge that, take care of your body, do exercise every day 20 to 30 minutes to keep you healthy.
I love
And
that.
also consider those people when, ever since you grew up, like there were friends, there were teachers, your parents, families who helped you to reach where you are, right? Think
Mm,
about them. Just reaching out to them, ask if you can be of any help. Just saying thank you, I think, goes a long way. Um, what I
definitely.
do also is that I watch this nature documentary, which really elevates my spirit, where I see, again, it's spiritual. A flower is in a valley, releases fragrance. It doesn't care whether there is anyone to smell that flower or not. So that attitude, like to give, not to take, I
Mm-hmm.
think it goes a long way.
Love that.
uh, and again, and so also sometimes what I do is also I listen to music which is inspirational, which escalates my mood, which makes me it motivates to do more. So
Mm-hmm.
again, if you spend like 15 to 45 minutes every day, that would be useful. So these
Totally.
so these are three yogas: yoga of knowledge early in the morning, yoga of action throughout the day, then yoga of devotion, maybe 15 to 45 minutes a day. And these three yogas, which I just mentioned, it was written more than 5,000 years back
Wow.
in an epic called Bhagavad Gita. It's an ancient Indian text, uh, and it was almost the first book which talked about stress management, because
Mm.
one of the characters in the book, that person was stressed, and the master then teaching that person how he can overcome stress in life. Uh, and I want to share one quote I was reading on the internet, where it says, "You got no checkbooks, got no banks. Still, I would like to express my thanks. I got the sun in the morning and the moon at night." It's by Irving Berling. He was one of the greatest songwriters.
That's beautiful. Yeah. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap it up right there. I thank you for sharing that with us. That was amazing. Um, Thank you so much for being here. This has been awesome. For those listening, as I told you, it was a lot. We hit a lot of things in this episode. So go back, listen to it a couple times. And if people want to reach you, we'll put all your links in the show notes. But if you want to tell us right now how we can reach you.
Sure. I talked about Vedanta, which I've been learning. So if you want to learn Vedanta, which deals with happiness in your life, so you can visit vedantausa.org. My teacher Gautam Jain, he conducts free weekly classes, and
Awesome.
every Tuesday there is an introductory class called "The Fall of the Human Intellect," which talks about how you can think, which I talked about throughout this podcast. So that's one. Second is that as I talked about gratitude and service, so I'm also a pro bono career coach. So you can reach out on LinkedIn if you have
Oh, that's
any
great.
challenges in your career. It could be leadership, it could be other things in your business. I am available, with all my knowledge I have, or knowledge I have received from others. So I'm there to help you. So feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn as well.
That's amazing. I love that. Well, thank you again so much for reaching out to me so that we could connect and have this wonderful conversation and share space today. It's been fabulous, and I hope that everyone enjoyed this episode and was able to get a lot of value out of it. Thank you again for being here, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, thank you, Christine. If I may, I want to give the audience a quote for them to think about.
Sure.
which is it's a quote by Jean-Paul Sartre, French philosopher. Everything has been figured out except how to live. So think about it, and wish you all the best in 2021. And thank you, Christine, for inviting me. It was a great conversation with you. I learned so many things, so thank you.
I love that.
Hope
Well,
we will connect soon.
Yes, back and forth. I love it. And the goal is stay curious.
Yes.
Thank you so much for listening to the Recovering Perfectionist Podcast. I'm Christine, and if this episode resonated with you or spoke to you in any way, please feel free to share. I absolutely love hearing from you guys and your thoughts about the topics based on your experiences. And also, if there's anything you want me to talk about, just screenshot this episode and share it on social media with your comments. Your feedback really helps me to curate episodes that best serve you. If you have time, I would greatly appreciate if you could leave a review wherever you're listening to this episode, whether on Apple or Spotify or any other platform. I'm wishing you a blessed week ahead, and remember, perfection doesn't exist. Take messy action. Healthy habits keep us balanced, and you are enough.